Billionaire thrown into river for billions, but a black maid saved his life. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The river flowed steadily, its deep blue waters reflecting the fading orange of the setting sun. A man in an expensive tailored suit stood at the edge of the bridge, his face twisted in anger. He gripped a briefcase tightly, the tension evident in his clenched fist. In front of him, a group of men in dark suits stood, their expressions cold and calculating. They had all gathered here for one purpose: to take everything from him. Daniel Miles, a billionaire investor known for his ruthlessness, had spent years building his empire. He had made deals that no one else could, crushed competitors underfoot, and accumulated wealth beyond measure. But it had all led to this moment. A betrayal. The men surrounding him had been once loyal partners, but now they saw him as an obstacle to their own success. They had learned of Daniel's secret. His latest investment was worth billions, but it also came with a dangerous risk. A risk that they planned to exploit. As the men exchanged quiet, hostile glances, Daniel knew what was coming. They had given him an ultimatum: sign over the rights to his investment, or they would destroy him. He had refused, stubbornly holding on to his pride, his fortune, and his power. That had been his mistake. A heavy shove to his back sent Daniel stumbling forward. He lost his balance, and with a sharp gasp, he fell into the cold, rushing river below. His briefcase slipped from his hand, sinking into the depths, the sound of it hitting the water a distant echo in his ears. The men stood at the edge, watching with icy detachment as Daniel struggled to stay afloat. They didn't care if he lived or died. To them, he was just another casualty in the game of business. For a moment, it seemed like the river would take him, pulling him further away from the shore with every desperate stroke. But in that split second, a figure appeared. From the shadows of the bridge, a woman in a faded uniform raced forward. Her name was Maya, and she worked as a maid at the nearby hotel. She wasn't supposed to be here, but something in her heart told her that she couldn't just stand by and watch a man drown, no matter who he was. Without a second thought, Maya plunged into the water, her legs kicking fiercely as she swam toward Daniel. The cold was numbing, the current fierce, but she refused to give up. She had no idea who this man was, but she knew that saving him was the right thing to do. With incredible strength, she reached Daniel just as his head dipped below the surface. Grabbing him by the arm, she pulled him toward the shore. It wasn't easy. The weight of his body and the force of the current made every stroke feel like a battle, but Maya kept going. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she managed to get him to the riverbank. She pulled him out of the water, gasping for air herself as she collapsed beside him. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was the distant rush of the river, the echo of the men's laughter fading away. Maya sat there, soaked to the bone, her heart pounding in her chest. She focused on him. She didn't know who he was or why he had been thrown into the river, but that didn't matter now. She had to help him. Maya shifted him gently, trying to rouse him. His eyes fluttered open slowly, and he groaned softly. As his eyes focused on her, confusion clouded his gaze. What happened?" he mumbled, his voice hoarse. Maya didn't answer immediately. She was still trying to gather her thoughts, her own mind racing. She had never been in a situation like this before. What was she supposed to say? "You fell into the river," Maya said simply, her voice steady despite the chaos in her head. "I saved you." The man blinked, still dazed. He opened his mouth to speak again, but was interrupted by a cough. Water splashed from his mouth, and he sat up, groaning as he tried to push himself up from the ground. Maya moved quickly to help him, her hands steady, guiding him to sit up more comfortably. He looked at her again, his expression softening as the shock started to wear off. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "Why?" Maya paused for a moment, looking out over the river as if trying to collect herself. Why had she jumped in to save him? Why had she risked everything for a man she didn't know? "Because it was the right thing to do," she finally replied. The words felt simple, but they were true. She didn't need a reason beyond that. She had seen him in danger, and her instinct had told her to help. The man stared at her, still processing everything. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he hesitated, as if unsure how to respond. Maya looked at him with a steady gaze, waiting for him to speak. After a long pause, he finally managed to say, "Thank you." Maya gave a small nod, her eyes softening as she looked at the man in front of her. It was clear that he was still in shock, but there was a quiet gratitude in his eyes. He had been thrown into the river by those who had once considered him untouchable. But now, someone like Maya had saved him, someone who, in their eyes, didn't matter. And yet, she was the one who had been there when he needed it most. It didn't matter that he was a billionaire or that she was just a maid. In that moment, they were equals. "You should get up," Maya said after a moment. "You're safe now. Let's get you out of here." The man nodded and took a deep breath, pushing himself to his feet with her help. His legs wobbled slightly, but he found his balance, standing tall for the first time in what felt like forever. As they made their way back to the hotel, the sound of the river fading behind them, Maya couldn't help but think about the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. The people who had tried to destroy him had underestimated him. They didn't know that someone like Maya would come to his rescue. They didn't know what he was truly capable of, and they certainly didn't know what would happen next. Maya helped him back to the hotel, her hand steady on his arm as he wobbled slightly. He was still disoriented from the shock of the fall, but his steps were growing more confident with each passing moment. As they reached the hotel lobby, the doorman gave them a curious look, but neither of them paid any attention. Maya was focused on getting him inside, away from the cold night air. She led him to a quiet corner of the lounge, and they both sank into the plush chairs. The silence between them felt heavy, yet comforting. The man, who had been so distant and cold earlier, now looked vulnerable, as if the entire world had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. Maya, too, was quiet, though she felt the weight of the moment pressing on her. She didn't know why she was still here, with him, but there was something about the way he looked at her, something that made her feel like she was more than just a maid in his eyes. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I owe you more than just thanks," he said, his voice hoarse but sincere. "I don't know why you did it, but I'm grateful. I thought I was done for." Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You're welcome," she said softly. "I just did what I had to do." The man nodded slowly, as if processing her words. "I'm Daniel, by the way," he said, extending a hand. Maya hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. "Maya," she replied simply. He held her hand for a moment longer than necessary, his grip firm, yet gentle. "Maya, I don't know how to explain this, but you saved my life tonight. You're not just a maid. You're something else." Maya shook her head slightly, her gaze lowering. "I'm just a woman who saw someone in trouble," she said quietly. "That's all." Daniel sat back in his chair, studying her with a mixture of awe and confusion. He had lived a life of privilege, surrounded by people who served him, who did his bidding without question. But Maya, she was different. She had thrown herself into the river to save him, without any thought of what she might gain in return. It was a selflessness he hadn't known in years. He had never met anyone like her. "I've spent my whole life building this empire," Daniel said slowly, "but it's all been for the wrong reasons. I've lost sight of what really matters." Maya looked up at him, her brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "I've made a lot of enemies. I've hurt people along the way. But tonight, when I thought I was going to die, it made me realize how empty everything is. You're the first person in a long time who's shown me real kindness." Maya didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure how to respond. She wasn't used to people opening up to her like this. But she could feel the truth in his words. "I didn't do it for anything," she said finally, her voice quiet. "I just couldn't let you drown." Daniel looked at her with a deep sense of gratitude, something he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope, a hope that maybe he could change, that maybe he could make things right. But he knew it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen overnight. Maya stood up, brushing the damp strands of hair from her face. "I should get back to work," she said, her voice steady. But there was something in the way she said it that made Daniel pause. "Maya," he said softly, "I don't know what I can do to repay you for what you've done, but I want to help. If you need anything, anything at all, just say the word." Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. She didn't need anything from him, but there was something about his offer that felt genuine. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this man than she had first thought. "Thank you," she said simply, before turning and walking away. Daniel watched her leave, a sense of awe filling him. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could start over. The next few days passed quietly, but Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Maya. He had returned to his usual routine, his office, his meetings, but something had changed within him. The briefcase he had almost drowned with, filled with paperwork and important investments, now seemed insignificant. What had really mattered in that moment had been Maya's bravery, her selflessness, her willingness to risk everything for someone she didn't even know. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, respect, but it had been Maya, a maid with nothing but her courage, who had saved his life. It ate at him, this realization. That night in the hotel lobby, when she had saved him, he had seen something in her, a strength he had never seen in anyone before. He wondered if she knew what she had done for him, not just saving his life, but waking him up to the fact that he had been living a hollow existence. Maya hadn't asked for anything in return, but Daniel felt the need to give her something, anything. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she had walked away from him, quiet and composed, like nothing extraordinary had happened. It was then that he decided he couldn't just let this go. He had to find a way to repay her, to make things right. The following evening, after finishing a long day at work, Daniel found himself standing at the lobby of the hotel, looking for Maya. He hadn't planned on this, but his feet had led him there without thinking. The moment she appeared, her apron still on, her eyes widening slightly when she saw him, Daniel realized just how much he needed to talk to her. "Maya," he said, his voice steady but unsure. "Can we talk?" Maya paused, glancing at him with hesitation. She had been wiping down a counter when she saw him, but now, she stepped forward, her expression softening. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I wanted to thank you," Daniel said, his tone earnest. "You saved my life. I don't know how to repay you for that." Maya shook her head quickly, stepping back slightly. "I didn't do it for anything," she replied. "It was just the right thing to do." But Daniel wasn't satisfied with that answer. He didn't want her to think that saving him had been a trivial thing. He wanted her to know that he recognized what she had done and that he wasn't about to let it go unnoticed. "I understand," he said, "but that doesn't change the fact that I owe you something. You've done more for me than anyone else ever has, and I'm not going to let that go." Maya looked at him in silence for a moment, her brow furrowing slightly. She hadn't expected this conversation, and she wasn't sure how to respond. "What are you trying to say?" she asked cautiously. Daniel took a deep breath. "I'm offering you a position with my company. A real position. Something that will make sure your talents are recognized. Something that gives you the opportunity you deserve." Maya blinked, taken aback. "I don't need anything from you," she said quickly. "I'm fine with what I have." "I know you're fine," Daniel replied. "But you deserve more than just fine. You deserve the chance to do what you're capable of, not just cleaning up after people like me." Maya stared at him, unsure how to respond. She had always prided herself on working hard and staying humble. But there was something in Daniel's words that made her hesitate. "I don't want charity," she said quietly. "This isn't charity," Daniel said, his voice firm. "This is me recognizing what you've done. This is me seeing you for who you really are, not just who you seem to be." Maya took a deep breath, her hands clenched at her sides. She wasn't sure if she should accept his offer or walk away. But something inside her told her to listen. "I'll think about it," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I don't know if I'll take it." Daniel nodded, understanding her reluctance. He couldn't blame her. "Take your time," he said. "I just want you to know that the offer is there. And whenever you're ready, I'll be here." Maya looked at him for a long moment before turning away. Daniel watched her walk off, a sense of determination rising in him. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew that Maya's courage, her strength, was something that deserved to be recognized. And he would do whatever it took to make sure she knew that. The following days were a whirlwind for Daniel. He couldn't stop thinking about Maya and the offer he had made to her. Despite his success in business, he found himself wondering whether he had made the right choice. Maya was different. She wasn't like anyone he had ever known, and the fact that she had saved his life without expecting anything in return made him feel something he hadn't felt in years: guilt, mixed with admiration. Meanwhile, Maya had been torn. The offer from Daniel weighed heavily on her. On one hand, she didn't need anything from him. She had worked hard for everything she had, and the thought of accepting charity, or even a job out of gratitude, felt wrong to her. But on the other hand, Daniel's offer wasn't just charity. It was a chance for her to prove herself, to do something more with her life. She had always dreamed of doing something beyond the confines of cleaning, of showing the world that she was capable of more. She just wasn't sure if now was the right time to make that leap. That evening, Maya found herself standing at the hotel's back in trance, looking out over the city. The sky was dark, and the air was cool, but it was a peaceful moment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She had spent hours thinking about Daniel's offer, weighing the pros and cons, and now, she was finally ready to make a decision. It was then that she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see Daniel approaching. His expression was serious, but there was something in his eyes, something softer, that made her pause. "Maya," he said gently, stopping a few feet away from her. "I didn't mean to pressure you. I just wanted to make sure you knew the offer was real. You don't have to decide right away." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "I've been thinking about it," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm still not sure." Daniel nodded, understanding. "I get it," he said. "It's a big decision. But I want you to know, no matter what you choose, I won't think any less of you. You've already done more for me than I could ever repay." Maya took a deep breath, her eyes softening as she looked at him. "I know," she said, "but it's not about repayment. It's about what's right for me. And right now, I'm not sure I'm ready to make that kind of change." Daniel didn't respond right away. He simply nodded, his gaze meeting hers. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, slowly, he smiled. A genuine smile that made Maya's heart skip a beat. "I respect that," he said softly. "Take your time. But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me." Maya smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. As Daniel turned to leave, Maya watched him go, her mind still filled with questions, but her heart a little lighter. Maybe it wasn't about the decision she made today. Maybe it was about knowing that she had options, that her life didn't have to be defined by the role others expected her to play. Maya knew that change wasn't easy, but it had to start somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, that somewhere was right here, in this moment, with the possibility of a new life ahead of her. The days after their conversation felt different. Maya continued her work at the hotel, but her mind kept drifting back to the offer Daniel had made. She hadn't accepted it, but she hadn't rejected it either. She was caught in the middle, unsure of where to go or what to do next. The security of her current life, though humble, had always felt like enough. Yet something about Daniel's words stuck with her. He had seen something in her, something that went beyond the role she had played for so long. The idea of being seen, truly seen, was something Maya had never expected. It wasn't just about the job. It was about the respect, the possibility of more. Daniel, for his part, had left her, with space to think, but there were moments when he found himself hoping she would come around. He knew it wasn't going to be easy. People like Maya didn't just trust anyone, especially someone from his world. He had tried so hard to build an empire, but now, in the midst of everything, he found himself wondering if it was worth anything without genuine connections. The thought made him uneasy. It was a late afternoon when Maya arrived at the hotel's lobby for her shift. As she walked toward the service desk, she caught a glimpse of Daniel standing near the window, looking out over the city. He hadn't seen her yet. She stopped in her tracks, unsure of whether she should approach him or just go about her day as usual. But something inside told her that this was the moment when she couldn't stay silent any longer. She walked toward him, her footsteps slow but steady. When Daniel turned and saw her, his face lit up, a mixture of surprise and hope crossing his features. "Maya," he said, stepping forward. "I didn't expect to see you today." She stopped in front of him, meeting his gaze. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "And I think I need to take that chance. To see what could be." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "You mean?" he asked, almost afraid to hope. "I mean the job," Maya said, her eyes not leaving his. "I'm willing to give it a try. I don't know what will come of it, but I'm ready to see if it's something I can do." Daniel's expression softened, his relief evident. "Maya, you don't know how much this means to me," he said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "I'm not asking you to change overnight, but I believe in you, and I think you can do incredible things." Maya smiled, though it was a little tentative. "I'm not sure what incredible things I'll do, but I'll give it my best. I just need the opportunity to prove it." They stood there for a moment, the weight of the decision settling between them. For Maya, it wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about breaking free from the limitations she had placed on herself, the ones society had placed on her. And for Daniel, it wasn't just about hiring someone. It was about seeing potential, seeing someone who was capable of far more than what the world had allowed them to be. As the days passed, Maya settled into her new role. It was strange at first, stepping into a world that had always seemed out of reach, but she found herself thriving in ways she hadn't expected. The work was challenging, but it was also rewarding. Every day, she learned something new, not just about her job, but about herself. She had doubts, of course. There were moments when she felt out of place, when she wondered if she was really cut out for this new life. But every time those doubts crept in, she thought back to the moment Daniel had saved her life, and how that had changed everything. She had taken a chance on him, and now, she was taking a chance on herself. One evening, after a particularly long day, Daniel stopped by her office, as he often did to check in. He looked at her with a soft smile, his eyes filled with pride. "You're doing great, Maya," he said. "I'm glad you're here." Maya looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was truly where she was meant to be. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing in me." Daniel nodded, his smile widening. "It was never about believing in you, Maya," he said. "It was about seeing you for who you truly are." And with that, they both knew that the future was full of possibilities, and no matter what happened, they had both taken a step into something new, something that neither of them could have imagined just a few weeks ago. Weeks passed, and Maya continued to settle into her new role. It wasn't easy at first. There were still moments when the weight of the change threatened to overwhelm her, but with each passing day, she felt more and more like she belonged. Her colleagues, who had once looked at her with skepticism, began to respect her. They saw how dedicated she was, how much she cared about her work. Even Daniel, who had been her lifeline when she first started, seemed to respect her more with every step she took. She had become more than just the woman who had saved him. She was a person in her own right, with her own strengths and abilities. But, as with all new chapters in life, there came a challenge. It started small. She had been working late one evening, trying to meet a deadline for an important project. The office was quiet, the hum of the city outside barely reaching her. She was focused, determined. But then, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. At first, Maya hesitated, but something told her to answer. "Maya," the voice on the other end said. It was a familiar voice, one that she hadn't heard in a long time. It was her mother. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Her mother had always been distant, never fully understanding the life Maya had chosen. Their relationship had been strained, full of unspoken words and hurt feelings. For years, Maya had felt like she was the only one carrying the weight of their past. Her mother's voice, however, held an unfamiliar tone this time. There was a desperation in it, something that made Maya's chest tighten. "I need to see you," her mother said, her voice shaky. Maya's mind raced. She hadn't seen her mother in months, and the thought of seeing her now, especially after everything that had happened, made her uneasy. "What's going on?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't know how to explain this, but I'm in trouble. I need you to come home. Please." Maya paused. Home. It was a word that carried so much weight for her, a place she had longed to leave behind. She had worked so hard to escape from the life her mother had offered her. But now, the pull of that word felt different. She had changed. She was no longer the girl who had fled in search of something more. She was someone different now, someone who had learned to face challenges head-on. "I'll be there," Maya said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "I'll come tomorrow." The call ended, and Maya sat there for a moment, the reality of the situation sinking in. She wasn't sure what she was walking into, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't the same person who had left all those years ago. The next day, Maya found herself back in the small town she had once called home. The drive had been long, and the closer she got, the heavier her heart became. She had tried to bury the past, but now, it was right in front of her, demanding her attention. When she arrived at her mother's house, she was met with a familiar, yet unsettling sight. The house looked the same as it had the day she left, run down, the paint peeling, the lawn unkempt. Her mother was waiting for her on the porch, looking smaller, more fragile than Maya remembered. There was no warmth in her greeting, just a quiet sense of resignation. "I didn't know where else to turn," her mother said, her eyes downcast. "I'm sorry, Maya." Maya took a deep breath, stepping forward. "What happened?" Her mother looked up, and for the first time in years, Maya saw a vulnerability in her eyes. "I've lost everything," her mother whispered. "I'm in debt, and I don't know how to get out. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." Maya felt a wave of sympathy wash over her. She had spent so many years resenting her mother for the way she had raised her. But now, seeing the woman who had given her life in such a broken state, something inside her shifted. "We'll figure it out," Maya said, her voice steady. "We'll get through this together." In that moment, Maya realized that the strength she had found in herself wasn't just for her own survival. It was for moments like this, when the past came calling, and she had to face it head-on. As the sun set behind them, Maya knew that this was just another chapter in her journey, one that she would face with the same courage that had carried her this far. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Maya stayed with her mother, helping her sort through the financial mess she had created. It wasn't easy. There were debts to pay, creditors knocking at the door, and old wounds that had never fully healed. But despite everything, Maya felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, she was facing her past and realizing that she didn't have to run from it anymore. She could confront it, heal from it, and move forward. During those long days of working through her mother's problems, Maya's mind kept drifting back to Daniel. He had been a constant presence in her thoughts. And although they hadn't seen each other since her visit to the hotel, the impact of their brief conversations lingered. She couldn't ignore how much he had changed her. The job offer still stood, but Maya wasn't sure if she was ready to jump back into the world she had left behind. The thought of stepping into the life Daniel had promised made her feel both excited and terrified. One evening, after a long day of paperwork and phone calls with creditors, Maya decided to reach out. She needed to clear her mind, and talking to Daniel seemed like the right thing to do. She dialed his number, unsure of what she would say, but feeling the pull to reconnect. When he answered, his voice was warm, and his relief was obvious. "Maya, I've been thinking about you. How are you?" "I'm doing better," Maya replied. "I've been helping my mom get back on her feet. It's been tough, but it's what I needed to do." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Daniel spoke again. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You're doing something important. And I know it's not easy." His words made Maya pause. It felt like he saw her in a way no one else ever had, like he understood the weight she was carrying. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice soft. "But I've been thinking a lot about your offer. I don't know if I'm ready to dive into something so big again, especially after everything that's happened." Daniel's tone remained steady. "I understand. It's a big step. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, that opportunity is waiting for you. No pressure. You've done so much already, Maya. Don't feel like you have to take on everything at once." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of his words settling in. She had spent so many years pushing herself to be more, to escape the past, to prove her worth. But now, for the first time, she felt like she could move at her own pace, without fear of failure. "I appreciate that," Maya replied. "I really do. But there's something I need to figure out for myself before I make any big decisions." "Take your time," Daniel said. "But know that I'm here for you, no matter what you decide." Maya sat in silence for a moment, the quiet of the room wrapping around her. She realized, as she listened to Daniel's words, that she didn't have to have everything figured out right now. She didn't need to rush into anything. The most important thing was that she was making progress, not just in her career, but in her life. And for the first time in years, Maya felt like she was in control of her own story. The next day, she sat down with her mother and went over the remaining bills. They had made a dent in the debt, but there was still a long road ahead. It was hard work, but Maya was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As the days passed, Maya realized that this was the new beginning she had been waiting for, not just in her professional life, but in her personal life too. She was no longer running from her past. She was confronting it, and taking control. The offer from Daniel was still there, and while she wasn't ready to make any decisions just yet, she knew that her path was unfolding in front of her, one step at a time. It wasn't about taking giant leaps. It was about moving forward, with purpose, at her own pace. Maya was ready for whatever came next. Weeks turned into months, and Maya found herself navigating a new phase of her life. She had worked through the tough times with her mother, and they were finally starting to see some progress. The debts were being paid off slowly but surely, and her relationship with her mother had begun to heal. Maya no longer carried the weight of resentment she once had. She was learning to forgive, not just her mother, but herself as well. But despite the relief she felt, Maya knew something was still missing. She hadn't forgotten about Daniel or the opportunity he had offered her. As much as she had told herself to take her time, a part of her knew she was stalling. She had moved past the guilt and uncertainty that had clouded her decision, but the idea of stepping back into that world, the world of business and high expectations, still felt intimidating. It wasn't just about the job. It was about who she would become if she took that step. Would she still be herself, or would she lose the sense of peace and clarity she had found over the past few months? It was early one morning when Maya finally decided she couldn't keep putting it off any longer. She picked up the phone, her fingers lingering on the dial for a moment before she pressed the call button. Daniel answered after a few rings. "Maya." His voice was warm, but there was a hint of surprise in it. "I didn't expect to hear from you today." Maya took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "And I think I'm ready to give it a try." There was a long pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. "You don't have to make a decision just because you feel like you should." Maya smiled softly. "I know, but I've realized that waiting won't make things clearer. I'm ready to move forward, and I need to take that first step." Daniel was silent for a moment, and then his voice softened. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You don't have to prove anything to me. You've already shown me what you're capable of." Maya felt a surge of gratitude in her chest. "Thank you. That means a lot. I'll set up a meeting for you," Daniel said, his tone now filled with purpose. "I'm excited to see what you'll do next." After the call ended, Maya sat back in her chair, a sense of calm washing over her. The decision had been made. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew it was time for her to take control of her path. The next few days were a blur of meetings and preparations. Maya had set the wheels in motion, and before long, she found herself walking into the building where Daniel's company was headquartered. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was excitement. She was stepping into a new world, a world that, only months ago, had seemed out of reach. As she walked into the office, the reality of it all hit her. The sleek glass doors, the bustling energy of the people around her, the hum of high-level conversations. It was all so different from the life she had known. But she was here now, and she wasn't going to let herself get intimidated. She walked to the reception desk, her head held high, her heart pounding with anticipation. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile and directed her to the elevator. When the doors opened to Daniel's floor, Maya felt a sense of purpose settle into her bones. This was the moment. She had no idea what would come next, but she knew she was ready for it. As she walked toward the conference room where Daniel was waiting, she couldn't help but smile to herself. She had taken the leap. She had moved beyond the fears and doubts, and now, she was here, ready to prove to herself that she was capable of more than she ever thought possible. Maya stepped into the conference room, her heart pounding in her chest. The sleek, modern decor of the room, with its polished wood table and floor-to-ceiling windows, only made her feel more out of place. She had worked so hard to get here, but now that she was standing in front of it, the reality was daunting. She had been ready to embrace the change, to prove herself, but it still felt like a giant leap. As she walked toward the table where Daniel was waiting, she caught her reflection in the glass wall. For a moment, she saw the woman she had become, a woman who wasn't afraid to face challenges, who wasn't bound by her past. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let fear hold her back now. Daniel looked up from the papers in front of him as she entered. He smiled warmly, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of pride and something deeper, trust. "Maya," he said, standing up to greet her. "It's good to see you." His voice was calm, steady as always. It gave her a sense of reassurance she didn't even realize she needed. "I'm glad to be here," Maya replied, her voice quieter than she intended. She sat down across from him, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. There were so many unspoken words between them. The offer, the life she had left behind, the future she had ahead of her. It all seemed to hang in the balance. "I've been looking over your resume," Daniel began, breaking the silence. "I know you've had quite a journey, and I admire your resilience. But I want to make sure you're comfortable here, with us, before we take the next step." Maya felt a slight tension release from her shoulders. This wasn't just about the job or the money. It was about finding a place where she truly belonged. "I'm ready for it," Maya said, her voice steady. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm here because I believe I can do it. I've spent so many years running from things, but I'm not running anymore." Daniel leaned back in his chair, nodding thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I want to hear," he said. "We need people who aren't afraid to take risks, to step up when it matters most. And I think you're that person." Maya's heart fluttered at his words. She wasn't just someone they were offering a position to. She was someone they saw as capable, strong, and ready. It was a feeling she had never allowed herself to believe was possible. "I appreciate that, Daniel," she said, meeting his eyes. "But I'm also realizing that this isn't just about proving myself to you or anyone else. It's about proving it to myself. I want to show myself that I can do more, be more." There was a long pause as Daniel studied her. Then he smiled again, but this time, it was more knowing, more encouraging. "You've already proven that," he said softly. Maya felt a wave of emotion well up in her chest. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a turning point. The life she had dreamed about, the life she had been so afraid to embrace, was now within her reach. It wasn't going to be easy, but she knew she was ready. "Thank you, Daniel," Maya said quietly, "for believing in me, for giving me a chance when I didn't even believe in myself." Daniel looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "You earned it, Maya. Now it's time to show the world what you're capable of." She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over her. The next chapter of her life was beginning, and it wasn't just about the job or the title. It was about her, who she was becoming, and what she was going to do with the second chance she had been given. As they began to discuss the specifics of the position, Maya's confidence grew. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, but she was ready to face it. She was no longer the person who had run from her past. She was the person who had chosen to take control of her future, and nothing could stop her now. Weeks went by, and Maya's life slowly began to take on a new rhythm. She had settled into her role at Daniel's company, and while it was still challenging, she was starting to feel like she belonged. The work was demanding, but for the first time, it felt purposeful. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was contributing, learning, growing. But even as she thrived in her professional life, the weight of her past still lingered. Her relationship with her mother had come a long way, but there were moments when the old wounds resurfaced, and Maya couldn't help but wonder if they would ever truly heal. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Maya sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through her phone. She hadn't heard from her mother in a while, and a small part of her felt a pang of guilt. Her mother had made so many mistakes, but Maya was starting to realize that she couldn't carry the weight of those mistakes forever. As much as she had tried to move on, her past was still a part of her, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. She picked up the phone and dialed her mother's number. The call rang a few times before her mother answered, her voice tentative. "Maya." There was a long pause, and then Maya spoke. "Hey, Mom. I've been thinking about you." Her mother was silent for a moment. "I've been thinking about you too," she replied, her voice quiet. Maya could hear the hesitation in her mother's words, but she pressed on. "I know things have been difficult between us, and I know I haven't always been easy to be around." Her mother sighed softly. "Maya, I've made so many mistakes. I don't know if I can ever make up for them." Maya paused, her heart heavy. "You don't have to make up for everything, Mom," she said gently. "I've learned a lot about forgiveness lately. Not just for you, but for myself too. I've spent so much time holding on to the past, and I think it's time for me to let go." There was another long pause, and then her mother's voice softened. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You've become such a strong woman. I don't know if I'll ever be able to tell you enough how sorry I am for everything." Maya smiled, a small, bittersweet smile. "It's okay, Mom. I'm not perfect either, but I'm learning, and I think that's enough for now." After a few more moments of silence, they said their goodbyes, and Maya hung up the phone. As she sat back in her chair, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. The weight of her past didn't feel so heavy anymore. She had done what she needed to do to move forward, and she was finally ready to fully embrace the future that awaited her. The next morning, Maya woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. As she walked into the office, the familiar sights and sounds of her workplace filled her with a sense of belonging. She was no longer just the woman who had saved a billionaire's life. She was Maya, the woman who had taken control of her own destiny, who had learned to forgive, and who was ready to tackle whatever came next. Later that day, Daniel stopped by her desk, as he often did, to check in. He looked at her with a knowing smile, and Maya couldn't help but smile back. "You're doing great," he said, his voice filled with pride. Maya looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Daniel," she said softly. "I don't think I would have gotten here without your support." He nodded. "You got here because of you, Maya. I just gave you the chance to show the world what you're made of." Maya's eyes met his, and in that moment, she knew he was right. It wasn't about the job or the title. It was about what she had learned along the way, the strength she had found in herself, the forgiveness she had given, and the new beginning she had created. It wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole new book, one that she was writing every single day. And as she sat there, surrounded by the bustling office and the people she had come to respect, Maya realized that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Months went by, and Maya's life continued to evolve. Her role at the company had expanded, and she was now overseeing a team, a position she once thought was far beyond her reach. Daniel continued to support her, but it was clear to everyone around her that Maya had found her footing. She wasn't just a capable employee, she had become a leader in her own right. As much as she thrived in her professional life, there were moments when Maya found herself reflecting on how much had changed. She thought back to the person she used to be, the woman who had been unsure of her worth, the woman who had carried the weight of the past and didn't know how to let go. That woman felt so distant now, as if she belonged to another life, another version of herself. One evening, after a long day of meetings and reports, Maya stood by the window in her office, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the skyline. The view had become something she appreciated more and more. She could see the progress she had made, not just in her career, but in her life as a whole. She had started to truly heal, to embrace the woman she had become. But that evening, as she stood there, something inside her stirred. There was still one thing left unresolved. She hadn't seen her mother in weeks, and as much as they had worked through their past, Maya knew that the distance between them was still there. She hadn't fully forgiven her mother yet. The wounds weren't completely healed, and that realization hit Maya hard. She had moved on with so many things in her life, but the relationship with her mother was the one thing that still felt unfinished. That night, Maya decided it was time to take the next step. She picked up the phone and dialed her mother's number. It rang a few times before her mother picked up. "Maya." Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Maya could hear the faint crack in her voice, and it made her pause. "Hi, Mom," Maya said softly. "I've been thinking a lot, and I think it's time we talked again." Her mother was silent for a moment, as if weighing her words. "I know things have been difficult between us," Maya continued, "and I don't want to keep holding on to the past. I think it's time we really talked about everything. I'm ready to forgive you." Her mother's breath caught on the other end of the line. "Maya, she struggled for words. "I don't know what to say. I've hurt you so much, and I don't know how to make it right." Maya felt a deep sense of compassion in her chest. "Mom, we can't change the past, but I want to move forward. I want to build something better between us." There was a long pause, and then her mother spoke, her voice shaking. "I want that too, Maya. More than anything." Maya's heart felt lighter as her mother's words sank in. She had spent so many years resenting the woman who had given her life, but now, she realized that forgiveness wasn't just for her mother. It was for herself too. The next morning, Maya took a drive to her mother's house. The long road there felt different this time, less like a burden and more like a step toward healing. When she arrived, her mother was waiting for her on the porch, a hesitant but hopeful smile on her face. Maya walked up to her, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't known before. They didn't need to say much. The silence between them spoke volumes, and in that silence, Maya knew that they were both ready to begin again. They sat down on the porch together, and for the first time in years, Maya felt at peace. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. A new beginning for both of them. Maya had come so far, and now, with her mother by her side, she felt like she was finally whole. The following weeks felt quieter, but deeper, as if the noise of survival had finally faded and left room for meaning. Maya continued her work at the company, but something fundamental had shifted. She no longer walked into the building trying to prove she belonged. She already knew she did. Her ideas were listened to. Her decisions carried weight. And when people looked at her now, they did not see where she came from. They saw who she was. One afternoon, Daniel invited her to walk with him along the river where everything had changed. The water moved calmly, nothing like the violent current that had nearly taken his life. Daniel stood still for a long moment, hands in his pockets, staring at the surface. "This is where I lost everything I thought mattered," he said quietly, "and where I learned what actually does." Maya said nothing. She let the silence do its work. Daniel turned to her. "I spent my life believing power meant control, money, winning. But when I was in that water, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was that someone chose to help me." He paused, his voice steady but heavy with truth. "You chose kindness when you had every reason not to." Maya looked at the river, then back at him. "I did not save you because you were a billionaire," she said. "I saved you because you were human." Daniel nodded slowly. "And that changed me." In the months that followed, Daniel restructured his company. Contracts became fairer. Exploitative partnerships were cut loose. He funded programs that opened doors for people who had never been invited into rooms like his before. But he never made a speech about Maya. He never used her story as a symbol. He simply followed the lesson she had taught him. Maya, meanwhile, moved into a home she had chosen herself. Not large, not extravagant, just warm. On Sundays, she cooked dinner for her mother, and sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, the kind that no longer hurt. Healing had not been dramatic. It had been slow, steady, and real. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft amber, Maya stood by her window, watching the city breathe. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Just 2 words. "Thank you again." She smiled, but did not reply. Some things did not need words anymore. Maya had not changed the world. She had not sought recognition. She had not asked for power. She had simply acted with decency when it mattered most. And in doing so, she reminded a man who had everything what it meant to be human. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video. Share where you are watching from in the comments. And remember this: kindness is not weakness. It is power.